At my dad's birthday, my sister yelled, "You're faking it," while everyone stared at me. I couldn't believe she would say that in front of our family. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Leora, and this is the story of how my family betrayed me and how I turned the tables. It was my dad's 60th birthday at our lake house. Everyone was there: Mom, my sister Kessa, her husband Trent, and a few cousins. I had been recovering from a serious illness and was barely able to walk. I thought this day would be about celebrating him, but Kessa had other plans. Earlier, I had overheard her whispering to Mom, saying I was faking everything. I felt my chest tighten, but I tried to ignore it. Later, she shouted it out loud, humiliating me in front of everyone. I ran to my old bedroom crying, feeling powerless. Dad tried to comfort me, but Mom didn't defend me. I realized Kessa had been manipulating our family for years. I decided I wouldn't stay silent. I collected proof of her lies and actions, carefully showing the truth to Dad. I stayed calm, and slowly, others started seeing the real Kessa. When I finally confronted her, she couldn't deny her actions. Dad apologized, hugged me, and thanked me for being honest. I set boundaries with Kessa and focused on rebuilding my life. I recovered, strengthened my career, and regained peace. Betrayal hurt, but standing up quietly and smartly gave me respect and closure I never thought I'd get. Dad's 60th birthday was supposed to be a joyful day at our family lake house. The house smelled of fresh flowers, and the table was full of Dad's favorite foods. I moved slowly, still weak from my illness, but I wanted to be there for him. Everyone was around: Mom, Kessa, Trent, and a few cousins, but something felt off. Kessa kept smirking at me in a way that made my stomach twist. She whispered things under her breath, like she wanted to ruin my moment. I tried to ignore her and focus on Dad, who was laughing with his friends. But Kessa's eyes followed me, cold and calculating. Even during the small toasts, she made comments that cut under the surface. I could feel the tension rising, and people started noticing. I tried to smile, nodding at relatives, but it was hard to mask the hurt. Every movement felt like a struggle, not just because of my body, but because I sensed betrayal in the air. As the evening went on, Kessa made little jabs at me in front of everyone, subtle, but sharp. It wasn't just a bad mood, it was deliberate. She wanted to steal attention from Dad's day and make me look weak. I felt trapped, knowing I couldn't defend myself without causing a scene. I retreated to a quiet corner, trying to gather my strength. Watching her control the room while I struggled was painful, but I realized I needed to stay calm. This day was about Dad, not her. I decided I would find a way to reclaim my dignity later, quietly, without letting her ruin more moments. Even in that tense, uncomfortable night, I promised myself that her actions wouldn't define me. I would rise above, and eventually, the truth would come out. Before dinner even started, I caught Kessa leaning close to Mom, her voice low but sharp. "She's making everything up," she hissed. I froze, my chest tightening as I heard her words. My heart sank. I couldn't believe she would try to manipulate Mom like that, turning her against me after everything I had been through. Mom didn't say a word. She just nodded slightly, and that small reaction felt like a punch to my stomach. I felt a wave of isolation wash over me. I had always trusted Mom to see the truth, but now I realized even she could be swayed. As the evening went on, the whispers spread. Kessa's smirks and glances made it clear she was enjoying this, watching me carefully. I tried to keep my head down, hoping no one would notice the tension building. But I couldn't hide completely, the look in my eyes must have told the story. Then, as everyone gathered around Dad for the cake, Kessa shouted it loud enough for the whole room to hear, "You're faking everything." The words echoed in the room, stopping conversation and laughter instantly. All eyes turned to me. I felt frozen, humiliated, and powerless. My legs shook, and I couldn't speak. I looked at Dad, hoping for support, but he seemed unsure, confused by the sudden outburst. The warmth and joy of the celebration had vanished. Kessa's betrayal was clear to everyone, yet no one immediately defended me. The night, which should have been full of love and celebration, became a moment of deep hurt and disbelief. I realized in that moment that the person I trusted most to protect me from lies had failed. And Kessa's cruelty had been stronger than I expected. I felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on me, sharper than any pain I had endured during my illness. After the shouting, I retreated to my childhood bedroom. The familiar walls, once comforting, now felt like they were closing in on me. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. I couldn't stop thinking about Kessa's words and how easily she had turned the room against me. I felt a deep ache, not just from humiliation but from a growing realization: this wasn't a one-time thing. She had been undermining me for years, quietly twisting moments to make me look weak or dishonest. Every smile, every casual comment from family that once seemed normal now carried a shadow of manipulation. Dad came to the door, knocking softly. He tried to talk to me, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. I could see his worry, but his words felt distant, like he didn't fully understand the depth of the betrayal. I wanted comfort, but even his presence couldn't erase the sting of what Kessa had done. Mom, however, didn't seem to grasp it at all. When I tried to explain, she brushed it off, saying I was overreacting or imagining things. That moment cut deeper than Kessa's attack itself. It was the silence, the dismissal, the lack of protection that made me feel small and unseen. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, I replayed the events over and over. Each memory reminded me of Kessa's ability to control perceptions and manipulate those around her. I realized I couldn't rely on anyone else to defend me. I had to find my own way. That night, as my sobs quieted into a heavy silence, I made a decision: I would no longer be a pawn in her game. I needed a plan, a way to reclaim my voice and show the truth without losing myself in anger. The next morning, I woke with a clear purpose. I couldn't ignore what had happened, and I refused to let Kessa continue manipulating everyone. I decided it was time to act carefully, not out of anger, but to protect myself and the family from more deception. I began collecting proof of her actions. Old messages, notes, and even small receipts became pieces of a bigger picture. Each document I found confirmed what I had suspected for years: Kessa had been twisting facts, making me look bad, and turning people against me. I felt a mix of shock and determination as I sorted through everything. I realized I had to be smart. This wasn't about confrontation in front of others, it was about creating undeniable truth. I carefully organized each piece of evidence, labeling dates and situations. Every little detail mattered. I wanted my plan to be thorough enough that no one could dismiss it. While gathering evidence, I also reflected on my approach. I didn't want to hurt Dad or make him feel conflicted. He deserved the truth without being caught in the middle. That thought kept me focused, reminding me that this was not revenge and anger, it was standing up for honesty and fairness. I also started thinking ahead, imagining the right moment to reveal everything. I knew timing would be crucial. If I acted too soon, it could backfire; too late, and the damage could worsen. Patience became part of my strategy. By the end of the day, I felt a sense of control I hadn't had before. Collecting evidence gave me a quiet strength. For the first time in years, I realized that Kessa's games could be exposed, and I could do it without losing myself or the people I loved. After organizing my plan, I began to act carefully during family gatherings. Instead of arguing or showing anger, I spoke with calm confidence. At meals, when conversations drifted toward family matters, I shared clear observations and small facts that hinted I knew more than I let on. I noticed the change almost immediately. Relatives who had once brushed off my words began listening. My voice carried authority I hadn't felt before. I no longer stumbled or hesitated, my presence commanded attention. It was subtle, but I could see the shift in their expressions. Kessa tried her usual tricks, rolling her eyes, making sarcastic remarks, but they didn't land anymore. I kept my tone measured, responding politely yet firmly. Each time I spoke, it chipped away at the image she had built of me as weak or naive. Even small actions became part of my strategy. I offered insights on plans or details at gatherings, making sure my contributions were noticed. It wasn't about confrontation, it was about proving my competence and awareness. I could see the surprise in Kessa's eyes whenever someone complimented my input or agreed with my points. With every subtle move, I felt more in control. I realized that showing strength quietly was more powerful than shouting or fighting. Family members started seeking my opinion, treating me with a new level of respect. By the end of the week, I noticed Kessa growing frustrated. Her usual dominance was fading, replaced by uncertainty. I didn't celebrate openly, but inside, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Step by step, I was reclaiming my place, proving that patience, intelligence, and calm confidence could win battles she had never seen coming. A few days later, Kessa's frustration became obvious. We went to Dad's favorite restaurant to celebrate a small family achievement, and she immediately tried to turn the evening into another attack. She made cutting remarks about my progress, questioning how I could manage my daily life after my illness. Then she added pointed comments about my work, hinting I wasn't capable of handling responsibilities. Her words were meant to embarrass me, to make the family laugh at my expense. I could feel her satisfaction as eyes flicked toward me, waiting for a reaction. But this time I didn't react the way she expected. I kept my posture relaxed, offered a polite smile, and answered questions with calm confidence. Inside, I felt a quiet power. Kessa's anger was evident now, but I refused to let it affect me. I realized that showing frustration or returning insults would only feed her game. I didn't need to prove myself through confrontation, I could let her unravel while I stayed steady. Throughout the meal, I responded to comments logically, pointing out minor facts or corrections without aggression. Every time she tried to twist the conversation, I redirected it smoothly. People around us began noticing the difference. I was measured, composed, and unshaken, while Kessa's irritation grew. By the time dessert arrived, her smirks had faded. She was desperate for control, and I was quietly reclaiming it without a single harsh word. I understood then that true victory didn't come from raising my voice, it came from maintaining calm, showing strength, and letting the truth shine through naturally. That night, I left the restaurant with a sense of satisfaction. Kessa had tried to humiliate me again, but instead, I had turned her aggression into proof of her frustration and weakness. Silent strength had become my most effective weapon. A few days later, Kessa's frustration became obvious. We went to Dad's favorite restaurant to celebrate a small family achievement, and she immediately tried to turn the evening into another attack. She made cutting remarks about my progress, questioning how I could manage my daily life after my illness. Then she added pointed comments about my work, hinting I wasn't capable of handling responsibilities. Her words were meant to embarrass me, to make the family laugh at my expense. I could feel her satisfaction as eyes flicked toward me, waiting for a reaction. But this time I didn't react the way she expected. I kept my posture relaxed, offered a polite smile, and answered questions with calm confidence. Inside, I felt a quiet power. Kessa's anger was evident now, but I refused to let it affect me. I realized that showing frustration or returning insults would only feed her game. I didn't need to prove myself through confrontation, I could let her unravel while I stayed steady. Throughout the meal, I responded to comments logically, pointing out minor facts or corrections without aggression. Every time she tried to twist the conversation, I redirected it smoothly. People around us began noticing the difference. I was measured, composed, and unshaken, while Kessa's irritation grew. By the time dessert arrived, her smirks had faded. She was desperate for control, and I was quietly reclaiming it without a single harsh word. I understood then that true victory didn't come from raising my voice, it came from maintaining calm, showing strength, and letting the truth shine through naturally. That night, I left the restaurant with a sense of satisfaction. Kessa had tried to humiliate me again, but instead, I had turned her aggression into proof of her frustration and weakness. Silent strength had become my most effective weapon. The next day, I knew it was time to approach Dad. I waited until we were alone, away from Kessa and the rest of the family, so I could speak freely. I took a deep breath and laid out the documents I had collected, showing the altered contracts, misleading emails, and investment discrepancies. I explained calmly, step by step, how Kessa had convinced him to commit funds to a fraudulent scheme and how she had covered her tracks. I made sure to stick to facts, avoiding any emotional outbursts, because I wanted Dad to understand the truth clearly. At first, his face reflected disbelief. His hand shook slightly as he went through each page, and I could see the weight of realization settling in. He was devastated, not just because of the financial betrayal, but because he had been unknowingly manipulated by his own daughter. After a long pause, he looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Thank you for telling me," he said quietly. I had no idea how deep this went. His voice trembled, and I could tell he was rethinking every decision Kessa had influenced over the years. As he processed the information, Dad began questioning past incidents, wondering how many times Kessa's interference had shaped family matters. He admitted he had trusted her completely, never imagining she could act so deliberately against us. That conversation marked a shift in our relationship. He no longer saw me as just his daughter recovering from illness, he saw me as someone capable, vigilant, and trustworthy. I felt a sense of quiet vindication, knowing I had exposed her actions without anger, without confrontation, and in a way that protected Dad from further harm. For the first time, I felt like the balance had started to tip in my favor, and Kessa's control over the family was beginning to crumble. A few days later, we had a small family gathering at Dad's house. I knew this was the right moment to reveal everything publicly, but carefully, so the truth could speak for itself. I waited until everyone had settled, then laid out the documents in front of the closest relatives, my uncle, a cousin, and a few aunts who had always been supportive. I spoke slowly and clearly, walking them through each piece of evidence. I didn't raise my voice or add extra emotion. I simply presented the facts, the manipulated investments, the misleading messages, and the ways Kessa had taken advantage of trust. Each document reinforced the next, leaving no room for doubt. Kessa's expression changed almost immediately. Her confident, mocking grin vanished, replaced by shock. She tried to respond, stammering excuses, but the papers in front of everyone spoke louder than her words. Her usual control over the room had evaporated. The relatives around me exchanged glances, their disbelief turning into understanding. They could finally see the full extent of her actions. What had once seemed like petty arguments or jealousy was now undeniable. Kessa had betrayed the family in serious ways. Silence filled the room. Kessa opened her mouth several times, but no words came. Her usual laughter, the sound that had made me feel small, was gone. She realized she could no longer manipulate the narrative. I felt a quiet sense of triumph, not from gloating, but from justice being done. The truth was now clear to everyone, and Kessa's schemes were fully exposed. It was a turning point, not just for me, but for the family as a whole. For the first time, I felt the power of standing firm, of letting honesty do the work, and of watching betrayal crumble without me losing my dignity. After the family gathering, the atmosphere changed completely. Kessa's falsehoods began to collapse under the weight of undeniable proof. Relatives who had previously been unsure now approached Dad and me with questions, confirming what they had seen. Her confidence was gone, replaced by a nervous, defeated silence. Mom, who had once turned a blind eye, finally spoke. She admitted that she had been too soft, that she had allowed Kessa too much freedom to manipulate situations. Her voice trembled, but it was honest. Hearing her acknowledgement lifted a burden I hadn't realized I was carrying. Dad pulled me aside, wrapping me in a tight hug. "I'm sorry you had to face all of this alone," he whispered. "Thank you for protecting all of us. I'm proud of you." The warmth in his words healed a part of me that had been bruised for years. I felt seen, understood, and appreciated in a way I hadn't before. I didn't need to shout or retaliate to make my point. My vindication came from clarity, truth, and patience. Kessa could no longer twist the narrative, and I had regained the respect I had lost for far too long. Instead of feeling anger, I felt a quiet satisfaction. I had stood my ground, defended what mattered, and preserved the family's integrity without cruelty. It wasn't about humiliating Kessa, it was about restoring balance and earning respect through careful, deliberate actions. That day, I understood the difference between revenge and justice. True justice doesn't come from spite, it comes from revealing the truth and standing firm. For the first time, I felt completely vindicated, knowing that honesty had won and the family could start healing. After the confrontation and the truth coming out, I realized I had to make changes to protect myself. I started setting clear boundaries with Kessa and even Mom. I decided I wouldn't allow their actions or opinions to control my emotions or dictate my life anymore. I stopped hoping for unconditional support from people who had repeatedly let me down. Accepting that reality was painful, but it gave me freedom. I could focus on relationships that were healthy and genuine, rather than chasing approval from those who caused harm. Rebuilding trust became my priority. I spent more time with Dad, sharing honest conversations and small moments that reminded us both of what really mattered. I also leaned on relatives who had supported me quietly, strengthening bonds that felt authentic and safe. Meanwhile, I focused on myself. Recovery, both physical and emotional, became central. I followed a routine that strengthened my body and mind, proving to myself that I could thrive despite the obstacles I had faced. Every step forward was a small victory. I also concentrated on my career, taking on projects that challenged me and highlighted my skills. With each accomplishment, I gained confidence and reminded myself that my worth wasn't tied to anyone's opinion. Through all this, I nurtured my emotional growth. I learned to recognize manipulation early, trust my instincts, and stay composed even when others tried to provoke me. Betrayal had once defined moments of my life, but now it no longer dictated my choices or my happiness. By creating boundaries, investing in trust, and focusing on personal growth, I reclaimed control over my life. The past no longer held power over me. I was moving forward with strength, clarity, and a sense of peace I had never felt before. As time passed, I often reflected on everything that had happened. The pain of being deceived and undermined was real, but I also realized that facing it with careful planning had given me unexpected strength. Acting thoughtfully, rather than reacting impulsively, changed the outcome completely. I didn't seek to hurt anyone unnecessarily. My goal was never to punish, but to uncover what was true and ensure fairness. By doing so, I protected myself, my father, and the rest of the family from further harm. The process taught me that justice can exist without cruelty, and that standing firm with integrity can be more powerful than confrontation. Living through this experience also reshaped how I saw relationships. I learned to recognize patterns of manipulation and to trust my instincts. I grew more aware of the people who genuinely cared, and I no longer allowed toxic behavior to dictate my emotions. It was liberating to separate myself from negativity while maintaining respect for those willing to support honesty. Now, life feels steadier. I carry dignity and self-respect into every interaction. My confidence comes not from proving others wrong, but from knowing I acted with clarity and purpose. Peace has returned to my home, and family bonds that mattered have been strengthened. Looking back, I understand that silence and strategy can be more effective than anger or retaliation. Standing calmly, with evidence and truth, allowed me to reclaim control and achieve closure. The betrayal still stings at times, but I no longer feel powerless. This journey taught me that resilience, careful planning, and patience can turn hurt into empowerment. I walk forward with a clear mind, a strong heart, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I faced betrayal without losing myself. As time passed, I often reflected on everything that had happened. The pain of being deceived and undermined was real, but I also realized that facing it with careful planning had given me unexpected strength. Acting thoughtfully, rather than reacting impulsively, changed the outcome completely. I didn't seek to hurt anyone unnecessarily. My goal was never to punish, but to uncover what was true and ensure fairness. By doing so, I protected myself, my father, and the rest of the family from further harm. The process taught me that justice can exist without cruelty, and that standing firm with integrity can be more powerful than confrontation. Living through this experience also reshaped how I saw relationships. I learned to recognize patterns of manipulation and to trust my instincts. I grew more aware of the people who genuinely cared, and I no longer allowed toxic behavior to dictate my emotions. It was liberating to separate myself from negativity while maintaining respect for those willing to support honesty. Now, life feels steadier. I carry dignity and self-respect into every interaction. My confidence comes not from proving others wrong, but from knowing I acted with clarity and purpose. Peace has returned to my home, and family bonds that mattered have been strengthened. Looking back, I understand that silence and strategy can be more effective than anger or retaliation. Standing calmly, with evidence and truth, allowed me to reclaim control and achieve closure. The betrayal still stings at times, but I no longer feel powerless. This journey taught me that resilience, careful planning, and patience can turn hurt into empowerment. I walk forward with a clear mind, a strong heart, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I faced betrayal without losing myself.